And I am going to share our screen and then we'll get into it. There we go. And do this. Very good. Well, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for our webinar, The 5 Biggest Mistakes Speakers Make from Stage. I'm Chris Natzke, along here with my good buddy, JB Braden. And JB and I have been doing this webinar over the last several months because we both had a lot of experience speaking, and we've also made a lot of mistakes speaking. And one of our passions is helping others who want to become speakers and coaching them in that process. So we figured one of the best ways to do it was, rather than maybe tell you what all the good things are that we do around speaking, is maybe share with you some of the challenges that we've had in the past. And so that we can help you become a better speaker by either avoiding those mistakes or being able to overcome them when they come about. So this is going to be our sharing these 5 biggest mistakes, and then we're going to give you some time at the end of this for some questions. And we also usually get some really good questions that everyone can benefit from. So I'm going to advance this slide here and tell you a little bit about what our purpose is. In addition to what I just said, we're going to identify those 5 biggest mistakes because, as we like to say, we've made all of them, plus more. In fact, I've even got a new one I'm going to share with you tonight from a talk I did last week. So we're going to do that. We're going to talk about those strategies and tools that I mentioned before, and then also some next steps that if you want to take your speaking to the next level, really become a world-class presenter, to be able to offer you an upcoming program that we've got coming up in August. So with that being said, I'm going to let JB introduce himself.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. I'm JB, as Chris said. I've been speaking for over 20 years and coaching speakers, and it's my favorite thing to do is get on stage and speak. And my favorite thing to do also is coach speakers how to become better speakers, but also how to craft a presentation designed to monetize on the back end, which is one of the things that I specialize in doing, and that's one of the things that Chris and I we do in our workshop that we teach as well. Chris and I have known each other for several years now. We've shared the stage, several times, and we've become known as Ebony and Ivory.
And we'll let you decide who's who.
Yeah, right. But we're here, like Chris said, we're going to share some mistakes we've made, but also going to share some great nuggets for you on how we learn from those mistakes, so that you can learn before even making those mistakes. So glad to be here. I'm looking forward to sharing this information with you tonight.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Chris Natzke, and I'm an 8th degree black belt and former national taekwondo champion. And that was basically the essence of how I started my speaking career. I worked corporately for several years, about 10 years out of college. So I had a lot of experience in sales and doing sales trainings. But when I opened up my martial arts school back in 1995, the primary way that I promoted my school and helped it to grow was through speaking. My marketing definitely wasn't doing it, but I knew I could influence, I could inspire people, and I went to any group that I could to talk about the benefits of what our martial art programs were doing, and it helped the school grow by leaps and bounds. And then as a result of that, I started asking to go on, be on other stages, and that's evolved into my ability to be a professional speaker now, probably about 10, 20 years after that. So JB and I both have interesting ways that we got into the speaking business, and then how we've been able to evolve with that. So one of the things we love doing is not only helping people develop powerful presentations, but like he said, being able to use it to advance our businesses, whether you've got products you want to sell, services you want to sell, or if you just want to go out and be an inspirational speaker and look for creating other speaking engagements, we help you do that as well. So you're probably wondering, and I'm hoping that you were here because this title intrigued you. So what are the 5 biggest mistakes speakers make from stage? Now, I'm sure that we're going to talk about 5 tonight. There's probably many, many more, but these are the ones that we see many speakers make, whether they're novice speakers, intermediate speakers, or even advanced speakers make these mistakes as well. And one of the things I think that's important as a speaker is to constantly be in that mode of learning. Each and every talk that I give, I know JB does the same thing. We always do that little triage at the end to say, where are the places I could have done better? Where are the things that, that I did really well and I want to continue to do? So being aware of those mistakes and being able to overcome them before they occur can take you a long way. So JB, why don't you go through with them the first biggest mistake we think speakers make from stage?
Absolutely, Chris. Thank you. And when you said that, before I start talking about this first one, one of the things that I was reminded of something that you and I have both done, especially early on in our careers. We always made sure we had somebody in the audience that would give us honest feedback on our presentation, because that's always a key question of where can I improve? Okay. And so, like Chris said, we're always in learning mode, which is why we love doing this webinar, because Chris and I are always in learning mode as well, no matter how long we've been speaking. And combined, we've been speaking for over 30 years. And so, but we're always learning, always looking to get better. So mistake number one I want to share with you is a lot of speakers, they don't communicate the purpose of their presentation. And most speakers aren't aware that it's a problem, that it's a mistake. And this is one of those things that you address before you even hit the stage. It's one of the key questions we ask all of our clients, whether it be a one-on-one session or a workshop. What's the purpose of your presentation? Because if you don't understand the purpose of your presentation, then how are you going to direct the audience or take them on that journey, right? And so understanding the purpose of your presentation, here's what I mean by that, okay? Because some people, they want to get out and they use a presentation to educate the audience. And if that's your purpose, just to educate the audience, then the presentation needs to be designed to do so. Okay. I can remember my purpose for my presentation when I started using speaking to grow my business, Chris, and you know this, my purpose of my presentation was to inspire the audience, entertain and engage, but also to convert the audience from prospects to clients.
That's right.
Well, I wasn't doing a very good job of that last piece because I didn't have the presentation designed the right way, because I wasn't clear on the purpose of my presentation. Okay. And so for some of us speakers, we want to sell a product or a service. Okay. Well, if that's the purpose, we need to be clear on that so that we can then design the presentation in the right way to deliver the purpose of the presentation. And Chris, I know you have a couple of examples of what we're talking about here.
Yeah, absolutely, JB. Well, the first thing is I'd like to say that many of us oftentimes will have the right presentation, but have the wrong audience. Or we have the wrong presentation with the right audience, or we have the wrong presentation for the wrong audience. So all of those things are super important to know who you're going to be speaking to and know the purpose of it. And when we're talking about having products and services that we want to make available, if that's what you want to do, it's also something that's done very subtly, and it works within the flow of the presentation. For me, there's nothing more of a turnoff than if I have a speaker who is giving their talk, and then at the end, now they're just talking about all the things they want you to buy. But when you have someone who's very artful in that and they know the purpose of it, they're interweaving it very subtly within the presentation. So at the very end, people are just engaged with them, they're connected with them, and they want to continue to work with them. Some of the examples I've had is giving talks where I've been able to enroll life coaching clients afterwards, and it had nothing more to do than me just telling authentic stories about work I've done with other clients. And I do that as part of my presentation. It's a very meaningful part of it. And people are like, oh, wow, that's what he does. And so it's a very subtle way, but a very effective way.
And what Chris is talking about is something that we'll talk a little bit more about later on in the presentation. Is some of the techniques that we use and we teach. So we'll share a little of those. But some of the other mistakes around not being communicating the purpose. One of them is a lot of people, entrepreneurs specifically, and speakers are not clear on the problem they solve for their audience. And the reason why that's a mistake and a problem is because if you're not clear on the problem, then you're not clear on how you're communicating it. And so it's very powerful when you can communicate the problem effectively in your presentation, because then you create that connection. Okay. But that's a big mistake a lot of people make, because they don't spend time thinking about the problem they solve. and then how to communicate that effectively.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
another one, Chris, is they're unclear on what they want their audience to do. So they don't have a clear call to action, so to speak. And it
Right.
goes back to what we're talking about. Knowing the purpose of your presentation. Do you have a call to action? Is it to educate? And then is your call to action just to have people, understand and cultivate the information? Okay. Or if it's to sell a product, what is it? And then understand, all of this goes back to understanding the purpose of your presentation. That's why we always start with that first question, Chris. What's the
Exactly.
purpose of the presentation? Because when
Yeah.
you understand the purpose, you can now construct the presentation. Okay, that's going to be more effective.
Yeah. I mean,
So
it's
that's it for
really,
the first one.
yeah. And it's really akin with, like, Stephen Covey would say, begin with the end in mind, right? So
Yes,
when
that's
you're
exactly
creating a
right.
presentation, you need to know what your end result, what do you want it to be? And then you build it
Yeah,
from the ground up from that perspective. So super important point. All right, buddy, we ready to go to number 2?
let's do it.
All right. Number 2 is speakers try to be somebody that they're not. And I think that this is probably one of the most common errors that I've seen speakers make, particularly young speakers, inexperienced speakers, and one that I made myself early in my career. We all have role models that we've seen in the speaking world. There's some fantastic speakers that are amazing role models. But when we move out of who we are authentically and try to just emulate them and copy their style, even if we do a great job, even if we're great impersonators, there's something that audiences will pick up and they'll know we're not being authentic. In my own personal experience, when I first started speaking, I thought I had to be very calm, cool, and collected on stage and use the resonance of my voice and be really kind of in control on stage, because some of the best speakers I saw that I thought were great had that type of a style. And I was working at that time with my speaker coach, and he kept asking me to get more animated, get more excited, get more, expressive. And it was really uncomfortable for me. And then finally it hit me. What he was asking me to do was exactly the way that I had been teaching martial art classes successfully for decades, because that's who I was. I was enthusiastic. I was getting people engaged. I was, I was energetic. I was vibrant on stage. And when I learned that lesson and I started leaning into that, it not only felt much better, it felt much more natural, but I started getting asked to be on other stages. I started getting hired a lot more. People started buying more product because I was concentrating on being who I was. Now, we all have individual personalities and individual styles. So the style that I'm talking about that works for me does not work for JB. He has a different style, but it's about finding who we are and make sure that we lean into that and really own it.
Oh, and it's about being true to who you are. Because my example is when I first started speaking years ago, and I was in one of my first trainings, and I remember doing the presentation, felt like I did a good job, and one of my trainers looked at me and he said, "JB, you realize you didn't smile the entire time doing that presentation." Now, I mean, look at this thing. How can I deprive my audience of that, right? Okay, because that's a big part of my personality. But like you, Chris, I had seen a lot of speakers, and I noticed that they're very serious and that sort of thing. And there's points in your presentation where you need to be serious, but there's also points where you need to smile. But what is your true self? And I like to bring energy to the crowd. I like to smile and have them smile. And so that was a huge lesson for me. It reminded me that when I'm on stage, to embrace who I am so that the audience can experience the authentic me.
Absolutely. And, in many ways, when we're speaking and when we're on stage, we're having, regardless of the size of the audience, we're having individual connection and conversation with people, right? And so who are you normally when you're really connecting well with just somebody one-on-one? And then how can you expand that on stage? So again, I think that being an effective speaker is about being very authentic, making connection with people on that deep level, and making them almost feel like you're having a conversation directly with them versus putting on a show just because you think that's the way it needs to be done.
And I want to point out something too, Chris, because you said it and I said it. and I don't want people to miss this. Okay, Chris and I both mentioned to you that we have had coaches and trainers help us with our presentations, and that's so important. A lot of people miss that. If you really want to become really, really good, um, so that you can bring out your authentic self, make sure you got somebody that you can work with to help you with that.
Amen. Amen. All right, brother, you ready to go to number 3?
Let's do it.
All right, take it away.
All right. So the next number 3 is they fail to prepare properly prepare. Think about this one. I learned this one early on in my career. So it's so important because once you've got your presentation down, design, right? Okay. You understand your target audience, you're communicating the problem effectively. It comes down to one simple thing: practice, practice, practice. Okay. If you've ever read the book Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, he talks about the importance of 10,000 hours. You want to be really good at something, it's about practice. People ask you and me all the time, Chris, why do we get nervous? How do we prepare? All of these things. How did you, Chris and I joke sometimes. Chris, I got to share this because Chris and I joke sometimes, right? Because people come up to us after they see us speak and they say, man, you guys make that look easy. And so we have to apologize to people because we've been doing this so long that we make it look easy, but it's not easy. It takes practice. And if you really want to be good, it's just like anything else. If you want to be good at anything, whether it's sports, whether it's an instrument, a musician, you have to practice. And that's the same here. And so when we're talking about practice, figure out what works for you. Okay, we have different clients who learn differently. So we teach them different techniques on how to practice. Some people like to memorize. Okay, some people like to write down the bullet points. I always tell people, for me, one of the things that work best is understanding what I want to communicate to the audience. And then, so what point do I want to deliver during this section? And then I practice that. Okay. And then that's how I practice my presentation. But understanding your learning style is really key here. When you say, Chris?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for me, JB, as you know, I'm visual. I'm a visual learner. So what I do, even if I'm not going to be using slides, there's a place in PowerPoint where you can print up to 9 of your slides on a piece of paper, right? And so what I'll do is I'll just get super quiet and I'll be visualizing in my mind, giving that talk, and I'll use those visuals of just seeing the slide in my mind's eye, and I'll write basically bullet points and I'll talk off of those. Like you said, some people will literally write out verbatim what they want to say. I don't work that well, but for me, visually is what helps me. And not only the presentation that I'm giving do I rehearse, but I also rehearse in my mind's eye how the audience is perceiving me. So, imagine you're on stage and you see 200 people there and you visualize them being really engaged with what you're saying. They're laughing at your jokes. They're clapping for you when you're done. I rehearse all that in my mind as well, because what I learned is, sometimes we get so caught up in the content, and the content is super important, but it's also about that connection. So I literally rehearse that in my mind before I ever go on stage. And the other thing I'll say is I've learned that if I have a talk, say on a Friday, I'll start my preparation and I'll do it every day leading up to it, say starting on Monday, and I'll practice for a half an hour, 40 minutes, etc. Rather than cram the night before, I'll do individual days in smaller bits of time, and it helps me retain it by the time I get up on stage.
There's nothing, there's no substitute for that practice and that repetition. Okay, because Chris, you and I both, we've been doing this long enough to know that in the speaker world, unexpected things happen. Yes. That's why your practice is so important, because you may show up with your slide deck ready to do a presentation and boom, none of the technology works. Well, you still got to give that presentation. Okay. That's why you got to practice so that you can know that presentation like the back of your hand, and you can give it, whether you show up and it's 30 minutes, you were told 30 minutes and you got to give it in 15. If you practice it, you can do that. Okay. Right. If you practice it, then if they say you got an extra 15 minutes, oh, well, you already have practice where you can stretch it another 15 minutes.
That's right.
So
Or cut it
practice is
down.
so
We've all been
important.
there, right?
Or cut it down. And
Yeah,
cut
where
it down is
you know,
not
we get an
always
hour and they
easy.
say, can you do this in 45? I mean, I've been there.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Well,
Yeah.
you know,
And
the
so,
other thing too that I want to talk about preparation is the day of the event. And I'm going to be totally honest here. I had a talk this last Thursday. JB and I were talking offline before this started. And this is a group that's had me, I think this is the third year they've had me in a row. It's a group of high school juniors and seniors up in Estes Park for a leadership conference. And there were a number of things that led to my big mistake here. But one of the things is I always get there early and I have a meal with them beforehand. So I was supposed to speak at 1:30 after lunch. I got there 11:30. And I thought I'd have plenty of time to set up my computer, set up the screen, check my mic, etc. Well, we went out to lunch beforehand, and the guy that had invited me to come and speak, he and I become friends. And he kept saying, "Oh, don't worry about it. You know, we'll get you set up. We're not on a big timetable." So I believed him. And all of a sudden, it was 1:15, and we're still in the cafeteria having to go up to the clubhouse where I'm supposed to give the talk. Well, wouldn't you know it, I get there, the kids are already coming in, my slides won't advance, the screen falls over. I finally get that rectified. And then they give me a lavalier mic, and 30 seconds into my talk, it starts screeching with terrible back, with feedback. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I am in speaker hell right now. And so the thing of it is, I learned is as experienced as I am, what I should have done in that case is listen to my intuition at lunch saying, hey, love having lunch with you. Let me get up to the house a little bit early and set up. But I didn't do it. And definitely it was to my, to my chagrin. So even the most advanced speakers will have that. And so the preparation not only starts before the event, but make sure you get there early enough to set up everything you need to so you can be at the top of your game.
oh, I love that, Chris, because we've both been there, right? And so that's why we teach our clients, take ownership
Yes.
of the space.
Yes.
Getting there early, checking your slides. If you have video, making sure they run, checking the sound. All of those things are so important. And so that's part of the preparation. That's part of the preparation so that your audience can experience what you have to give them at the highest level. I appreciate you sharing that.
And I will tell you that in front of you and everyone else, JB, that mistake will never happen again. So I have learned. I have learned. Exactly. All right. Are we ready to move on, buddy?
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay. All right. So mistake number four is that presenters have a tendency of talking about an event rather than telling a story. One of the most important aspects of what we do as speakers is to be able to touch people emotionally. And sometimes as speakers, we get so wrapped up into our content and wanting to make sure that every sentence that we say is perfect, every T is crossed, every I is dotted. But what I have found is that, yes, the content is definitely important, but what really, really impacts people is our ability to touch them emotionally. People will remember how you made them feel much, much longer than what you told them. And I'll give you a personal experience. This is back, oh man, almost 8-10 years ago when I was first starting to speak here in the Denver area. And I had been invited to join a mastermind group. And there were 3 of these groups in Denver that one person managed. And he asked me to come and do a business presentation to these 3 groups. And so I did my business presentation. I think it went well. And at the end, we had questions and answers. And in 2 of those 3 groups, there were 2 different people who had heard me give my keynote talk in Denver. And at the end of that, when we went to Q&A, those 2 individuals in 2 different meetings raised their hand and asked me the same question. Would you tell us the story about the kid in the wheelchair? Now, that just happens to be one of my signature stories that I tell about one of my students that was in a wheelchair. And instantly it hit me. Yeah, the content that I gave them was good, but what they remembered, however many weeks or months before they had heard me, was the story. So when we can marry great storytelling in with great content, that's the mark, I think, of a great speaker.
And it's so important, Chris. We spend a lot of time on this in our Champion Speakers 2-day workshop. We work with our clients, helping them build a signature presentation, as well as one-on-one coaching. We talk a lot about this, the power of story and helping people craft their story. And then after you've crafted the story, practicing the story. I learned years ago, one of my coaches taught me, said one of the best ways to practice your story is take a friend, family member, wife, whoever, take somebody out to lunch, okay? Order a glass of wine, iced tea, whatever, and sit across from them and tell the story, okay? Because the story needs to be conversational, okay? It needs to be, you're taking them on a journey. And the only way you can do that is to practice that. And so that's one of the best ways I learned to practice a story. And I'll tell you what, Chris, I wish I'd have did that a couple of weeks ago. Although I don't know if that would have worked for this one, because a couple of weeks ago I was speaking at a conference, and in this particular presentation I was doing, one of the stories I tell is about this guy named Mateo who developed a presentation. He was a mechanic. Okay, he developed a presentation to help build his clientele and generate leads. And so he named his presentation. The title of his presentation was "Never Purchase a Lemon Again." Well, in the workshop, in the presentation, when I'm telling this story, I've told the story a few times, so I didn't think about it. But luckily, I had someone in the audience, a fellow speaker, gave me some feedback, and she said, "Just want to let you know, the lady that was sitting next to me, she leaned over and said, 'What's a lemon?'" See, it didn't dawn on me.
That's right.
There's some people in the audience that don't know what a lemon is when a mechanic is talking about a lemon. And for those of you out there that don't know what a lemon is, it's simply a bad car, a car that you buy, doesn't work, costs more money to fix it than you paid for. That's a lemon. And so that's a simple mistake that I could have fixed just by clarifying exactly what a lemon was. And so
Exactly.
the stories are very powerful, but knowing how to tell them and practice them is very important as well.
Yeah. And a couple of things I would add to that is we all have stories. And sometimes we'll work with people, right, JB, and they're like, "Oh, my story isn't that powerful," or, "I don't know if I have any stories, or I don't have a great story like that person does." And I always like the idea that many times the things that we think are ordinary, other people think are extraordinary, right? So
Exactly.
don't discount the impact of your stories. And also, if you're kind of at a loss for those stories, have a notebook with you. And when you're out and about in town or at work or whatever, and unique things happen, things that are funny, things that are comical, things that are, make you wonder, have a notebook and write those stories down, because people will relate to those experiences. And then the final thing that I'll say is, oftentimes I always get to my speaking engagements early, and I do my best to engage with people that I'm going to be speaking to. And sometimes some of the best opening stories are things that I've talked to with someone at an opening cocktail party, for instance.
Absolutely.
Now, I always ask permission to share the story, right? But I'll be up on stage, say, I was talking with Sally before, and Sally, you were telling me about, and now all of a sudden I get this instant connection to the audience, right? So there's so many unique ways to develop stories. And I think the sign of a master speaker is being a master storyteller.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Chris.
All right. We ready to land this plane here, JB? Go to number 5.
Yeah, let's do it, because what we just talked about is takes us directly into that. A lot of speakers, they don't deliver a talk that captures, connects, and closes. Okay, so let's talk about that. We just talked about story and the power of story. We spend a lot of time on this. Why? Because a good story and someone who can share a story and take you on that journey not only captures the audience, but it connects with the audience. And that's why we spend so much time on story. And that's why Chris said what he just said. A great speaker is a master storyteller, being able to weave stories throughout the presentation to increase that connection and capture that audience attention, but not just their attention, Chris, but how about their hearts in some cases, right? And so that's what a good story could do, because like Chris said, most people, they may not remember the content or may not remember the words you spoke, but they'll leave out of there remembering how you made them feel. That feeling lasts a long time. So stories are key to developing a presentation that's going to capture and connect. Okay, but here's the other thing. Physically, we want to connect as well. Physically, we want to connect as well. And simply making eye contact with the audience. And as I said earlier, smiling. Okay. I will never forget one of my trainers told me years ago. He said, your objective when you're on that stage and when you're speaking to an audience, whether it's an audience of 100 or whether it's an audience of 100,000, your objective is to look at the eyes of everyone in the audience. Look at the eyes of everyone in the audience. And man, when I started doing that, I started getting comments of, man, I felt like he was talking directly to me. Okay. So just that little simple technique right there helps connect with the audience on a different level, because you're talking to every single person and you make them feel that way when you have an objective of connecting with each person, making eye contact with each person.
I so agree with you, JB. In fact, I had as you know, a very similar story. I had developed a bad habit when I first started speaking, where I would look at the tops of audiences' heads. That's what I was doing. Yeah. And so, in one hand, it looked like I was looking at the audience, but people didn't feel the connection. And I was doing an intensive leadership course. And one of my buddies who was coaching me in speaking said, dude, you're not connecting. Where are you looking? And all of a sudden I realized I'm looking at the tops of people's heads. So when I started looking at eyes, it changed the entire realm of the presentation. The other thing, important. Yeah, the other thing that I've learned to do, and it's just something that came natural for me, JB, is I love audience participation. So you can do that in a number of ways. You can do it by, having people raise hands to questions. You can have them turn and talk with someone else for a brief period of time and get feedback from the audience based on those conversations. I happen to love bringing people up on stage. I'm a martial arts teacher. So, that's kind of the theme of my keynote talk. So I'll literally bring people up. And what's so fun is I bring somebody up and all of a sudden I see all the cell phones come up, start taking pictures, right? So now I know that I've got everyone engaged. And, even if an early part of a presentation, they still haven't warmed up to me. I know in my hip pocket, I'm going to be bringing someone up on stage, in a minute or two, and all of a sudden all the energy changes. So there's little different techniques about getting people captured and engaged in what you're up to.
And it's so important as well. And so those are some key things to capturing and connecting with an audience in your presentation. And then we want to finish with closing. A lot of people will get up and do a presentation and there's no clear close. Okay. There's no clear close. There's no clear call to action. And that's so important because you want the audience to know what to do next. You want them to know how you want to engage with you on the next level. And so having a clear call to action is so important. And Chris, we talk about this all the time, how closing is a process. It's not an event. It's not an event at the end of the presentation. It's a process throughout the presentation. And we kind of alluded to this earlier about how if you have a book or product to sell, embedding within the presentation that you have that. Okay. For instance, if you're someone who does workshops and one of the purposes of your presentation is to lead people to your workshop, somewhere throughout that presentation, you're going to say something along the lines of, this is one of the things that we do in our workshop with our clients. And then at the end of the presentation, when you're closing, you're not spending a whole lot of time talking about that workshop. You can simply say, if you want to learn more about the workshop that I mentioned earlier, especially if you're on a stage where they won't let you sell, these techniques are so important because a lot of times we're on stages where they say you can't sell from stage. Okay. However, if you've done your presentation correctly, you can still get people to engage in that workshop by simply embedding you have a workshop. At the end of the presentation, your close is simple and your call to action is simple. Hey, if you want to hear more about my workshop that I mentioned earlier, come talk to me. Simple as that. And that's not selling from stage. And so having those clear closes is so important. And Chris, there's something that you do that I love. And I want you to share with the audience about when it comes down to how you incorporate your book into the presentation.
Yeah, yes. Thanks, JB. This was a game changer for me. Mm-hmm. And I learned this from one of my coaches. What I used to do in my talks way back when is I do my thing. And then at the end, I'd say, oh, and by the way, I have this book for sale, and I'd hold it up, whatever. Well, I shared with you already that I like to bring people up on stage. And one of the things my coach told me is that people generally buy books, not necessarily because they really want to read them, although hopefully they do, but they want to take a piece of you home with them. Okay, they've had a positive experience with you on stage. So what I do, and I just did it, my last talk that I gave, is I bring someone up on stage, and then after they help me out, I take my book and I place it over my heart so that the audience is connecting it with me, right? And I'll say, hey, Jennifer, thanks so much for coming up and help me. I so appreciate you. You're such a great sport. As a result, I'd love to gift you my latest book, Breaking Through. It was an Amazon #1 bestseller. I'd like to give it to you as a gift. And if you'd like it autographed, come back to my autograph table afterwards, and I'll be happy to sign it for you. That's all I said. When I started doing that, my book sales doubled. They literally doubled. And it was that subtle. I was giving it away. I was making them aware that I had a table in back. And it was like magic. It was like magic.
Folks, let me tell you something. I get goosebumps every time I hear that. You people don't understand what you just got. Okay, if you didn't get anything else out of this webinar, that right there is a golden nugget. That's a gem right there, man. That's a boss move, a pro tip. I want to make sure that you understand the importance of what we just talked about there. Great job, Chris. Thanks for sharing that example.
Thanks, man. Well, I'll tell you what. So we've just shared with you what we consider to be the top biggest mistakes, the 5 biggest mistakes that speakers make from stage. But just as we've been sharing with you, we want to make sure we continue to help you on this process. And so what we want to share with you now is something that we're really excited about coming up in August. It's an event that we call the Champion Speakers Academy. So it's a way for us to take our knowledge and be able to help aspiring speakers, whether you're a beginning speaker, an intermediate speaker, or someone who's been speaking forever. We know that every one of those people can gain some benefit from it. And so what we're going to be offering here in August is a seminar that, first of all, helps participants gain a clarity on your target market and making sure you're getting the right people, you're getting in front of the right audiences with the right message. Next, you'll be able to discover how to communicate the problem that you solve. So we literally will take you through a process that says, okay, what is the problem that I solve for audiences, and how can I best articulate that and make that a powerful presence on stage? Next, we're going to help you actually craft a signature presentation. And at the end of it, you'll not only have it developed, but you'll literally be able to deliver a 25-minute keynote that you're going to be getting feedback on. So you can literally hit the ground running after the seminar and go out and start delivering that. Next is you're going to learn some tools and techniques that are going to transform your presentation to good, very good, to world class. Some what we call ninja techniques that allow you to really connect with audiences and make sure you get the greatest benefit. And of course, there's much, much more. So JB, why don't you tell them a little bit about the logistics of how this is going to work?
Absolutely. This is a live 2-day workshop in Denver, Colorado, Denver DTC area, coming up, as Chris said, August 19th and 20th. First day session is Friday, August 19th. And we're going to be going through a lot of those things that Chris talked about as far as helping you craft that presentation. And then the second full day session is that following Saturday, August 20th. And then that's where you're going to do a lot of standing and delivering your presentation, getting the feedback, not just from Chris and I, but also from the other participants in the workshop, which is also always priceless. Beforehand, you have a lot of pre-work that you have to do to get prepared for it, so that you can show up like the badass superhero that you're born to be, and come in and be the champion speaker that we want you to be when you get there. And then you have 2 one-on-one coaching calls with Chris and I, okay? And these also will help you clarify your message, hone your story in, whatever you want to work on specifically, okay? Whether it be creating your sales plan, hey, you're not clear on the process or my content, I need extra work on that. Whatever you need extra work on, you get 2 sessions with us to help you do that. And those sessions are, we've been told that they're priceless.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, just to be clear, this is an experiential workshop, right? So it's not where you're just going to get a bunch of great content, although you will, but you're literally going to be up speaking, getting feedback live. right? And there's nothing that's more valuable than being able to deliver in from an audience. How many times, if you have been a speaker, you go out there and you deliver your presentation and you're like, did I do well? Did I not do well? Right? You get that feedback automatically. You can make the changes in real time, so you can make sure you're hitting the ground running after you leave the seminar. So some of the other benefits you get is, we walk through a whole process of identifying your ideal client avatar. Who are the audiences that you want to be in front of? Obviously, gaining real clear definition of the purpose of your message, which is so important because sometimes we lose track of that, right? And it doesn't mean that you don't tailor your messages based on your audience, but most of us have a very clear message that we want to give. We talk a lot about the power of story, and we take you through a specific process on how to create signature stories. And then make sure that you're developing that presentation that not only educates and entertains, but then also converts customers to paying customers, whether they be coaching clients, people that will hire you for future talks, or people that want to buy your products or services. So that's the benefits. Go ahead, JB.
I just want to reiterate what you just said, because I don't want the audience to miss how important it is to be able to craft and design a presentation that's specifically designed to monetize any stage. Okay, especially for speakers just starting out, you're not always going to get a paid speaking gig. Okay, and if you're using speaking as a marketing tool to grow your business, increase your revenue, having a signature presentation that's specifically designed to monetize any stage is so important. And that's what you walk away with this from this workshop.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this is how it works from a logistics standpoint in terms of the cost of the program. It is generally $29.97 for that 2-day workshop, as well as the 2 coaching calls that you have with JB and myself, or 3 monthly installments of $10.97. But if you early take advantage of our early registration, by next Friday, August 5th, those 2 prices move down to $24.97, 1 installment of $24.97, or 3 installments of $9.97. And again, the way we view this is an investment in yourself, because we want nothing more than be able to teach and train you so you can go out, deliver, and be able to go out, whether it's a paid speaking event or one that is free, but you're able to sell your products and services and be able to make up for that investment in a real short period of time. And we've got the tools and the strategies to be able to help you do that. So if you're interested in this, you can just take your phone and scan. It'll take you to the enrollment page for that. Or if you're interested and you still would like to know a little bit more information, however, Anz is going to put a link in the chat box right now, and you can set up a one-on-one call or a 2-on-1 call with JB and myself, and we'll just explain and answer any more of the questions that you might have to see if this program's right for you. And as one additional bonus, if you enroll by the 5th, we'll also throw in 1 additional coaching call. So rather than 2, you'll have 3 individual calls with JB and myself.
Actually, Chris, that what you just said about the extra coaching call, that's for our overachievers on the call, okay? And that's for those who sign up within the next 24 hours. You get that extra bonus coaching session, okay? So how many overachievers do I have in the audience? If you're an overachiever, drop overachiever in the chat box, okay? But for those of you who sign up within the next 24 hours, you're going to get an additional coaching session with Chris and I. And I'm telling you, it's priceless.
All right.
Having that expertise that you can learn from is priceless.
Very good. Very good. So at this time, guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take down these slides, and we've got a couple minutes here left for questions and answers. So love to hear any thoughts and questions and that you might have, anything we can share with you based on what we either spoke about or any other challenges you might have in regards to speaking.
You want to have questions, Rob, feel free to raise your hand, or you can drop it in the chat box, either one.
Do you cover different avenues of speaking, like online versus in person?
Yeah, great question, Sal. Most of what we are going to deal with is going to be live speaking. However, what happened in COVID is both JB and I had to adapt and and pivot as well. So we've got quite a bit of experience online as well. It's definitely a different animal, right? There's different ways of engagement where when you're in front of an audience, you can do it personally, have them raise your hand. Now you have to use little tools like the chat boxes and things like that. So we go over that a little bit in individual coaching sessions, and but it's mostly geared toward live speaking.
Right. And but that's also some of those ninja tips and techniques that we share. And so some of those involve virtual presentations as well. So any other questions?
We must have
Wow,
been
Chris.
pretty good, JB. They don't have
I'm
any
thinking
questions.
I'm thinking we need to give ourselves a pat on the back.
Yeah,
Good
and, you
stuff.
know, JB and I have mentioned this before, is that one of the both of us, what we did is when we really got serious about wanting to be speakers, is we really sought out help. And whether it's with us or with somebody else, it's super, super important that you get the coaching involved, because, you know, just like anything, the best athletes in the world have coaches and the best speakers have coaches, right? And so if you really are serious about taking your speaking to another level, whether it's with us or somebody else, highly, highly recommend that you get coaching in regards to speaking.
Excellent. Good
I
stuff.
really enjoyed this. It was a really eye opener. And I'm just I'm just taking this all in, and I would love to have an opportunity for you guys to work with me and help me.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, Eric, if you want to, I think Anza, did you already put the link in the chat box for the discovery call? And you know, you can use that, Eric, or if you want to just reach out to me offline, and we'll get something set up, and JB and I can we'll set up a call with you. Love to do that.
Yeah, we'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, in fact, Eric, I already told you this, but Eric sent me a video that he had just done recently. He had had some personal challenges, but he took those challenges and really took them into some real positive, you know, positive expression. And man, I was getting chills when I watched your video, partner. So that was really, really good. Really, really good. Powerful.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Awesome. All right. Any other insights, comments, questions before we wrap it up? Well, thank you all. Chris and I, we want to thank you very much for attending the webinar. Don't hesitate to reach out if you know, later you have a question that you didn't think about here during this time. Feel free to reach out to us, and we'll do our best to answer them. And thank you guys. Thank you all for being on the call.
Thanks so much, everybody. And you'll get a follow-up email from us as well that'll have this the recording of this. So if you want to watch it again, as well as a link if you want to set up a call and a discovery call with both of us, you'll have a link for that as well. Okay, everyone. Thanks so much. Really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Brian.
See you.
Krista, thanks. Thank you.